If we look at long term, one of the fastest attributes, I guess, that decline is power.
Welcome back to the Athlete's Edge podcast. Last week we covered training, health and education for our 12 to 18 year old age bracket, the foundation phase as you can call it. Today we're moving into the 18 to 40 bracket, the years where performance peaks, priorities shift and some training evolves. For some this means playing at the highest level of their sport, for others it might mean balancing work, lifestyle and still finding time to train. So what's the main focus for this age group between the 18 to 40?
So with this age group, obviously it's a huge variety of people and goals and timelines and what they can commit to. But I think it's really about really optimizing that peak performance with an element of can we maintain the capability to perform even outside of sport. So at this age, obviously adults, we've got jobs, families, things outside just our sport and our training. So it's making sure that we're giving to those things and not training taking away, which is a common mistake. So from that 18 to sort of late 20s, 30, it's really about that performance phase. Like I said, you're in your prime, so it's a chance to really optimize your performance. Your strength, power, speed off the back of that should all peak, but only if your training complements that. So that's where we'll talk about some of our really common mistakes we see that people kind of make and things that are probably easy fixes. It's just listening to the right people. Off the back of that, we see some people get confused around, I guess from like social circles and work and where they train. And again, they double up on some of the loads, particularly from that 30 to 40 when you've got to be really smart if you're trying to prolong your career in your sport and keep getting the most out of yourself. Start to see some little niggles, which we'll talk about, pop up and why they might occur. I guess it's, just really about having a clear plan. Hopefully we've matured enough by this point. We should have a better understanding of our training. So as we learn more about our own bodies and what works, what doesn't, it's just a bit more of an individual focus and being really clear on what you need to do to get the most out of your sport, but start thinking about the next few decades of your life because we've only got the one body.
So if we were to break it into, kind of two separate age brackets within this kind of age bracket, so if we go from 18 to 30 where athletes are probably still trying to get the most out of themselves, what should their training sort of look like compared to the 30 to 40? What's the kind of main difference?
I think probably the philosophy is the same, but that 18 to 30 is very much around, almost if you play local footy, train like an AFL footballer. Like what training do you need to do? How do you recover from that? Eat really well. Like it's all the fundamentals because you want to be at your best. In mid-20s, you're probably playing your best footy. You ever played netball, basketball. So I think we still want to be aiming to get better. In our 30s to 40s, I guess it's a little bit more holding on, which I think you've got to be really smart. The mistake there is I think people have neglected their strength, power, speed work 18 to 30. So they've slowed down even more by the time they sort of get that 30s. So then if they're trying to hold on to a career in their early 30s to mid 30s, because they've lost a step, I think where the injuries and stuff happen is they're trying to supplement that with fitness work and doing a lot of volume and whatnot, which just breaks bodies down. So then they finish careers with all these little niggles, injuries. And then it also then sets them up to their 40s and 50s to now have this kind of long injury list where, there's all these aches and pains. And then, we see this constant cycle. People fall out of love with training because it hurts. And then health and everything else suffers off the back of it. I think it's really strength, power, speed you're in your prime in your 18, early 20s, mid 20s. So you probably should be your fastest in your late 20s. But most adults don't train that because they're going to a traditional gym where they're bodybuilder training. And then off the back of that, the lifting gets hard. So they probably join a more circuit cardio-based facility. This is the classic pattern. Then off the back of that, now they're just smashing themselves with the same load they do at footy training or netball training, lots of running and jumping and this sort of stuff. And that's when we start to see calf strains and Achilles issues flare, for example, and they get called this old man injury in your mid late 30s. I think it's just overloading the calves. I don't think it necessarily has to be that way. I think it's just because we haven't done calf strength. Now we're doing all this running that uses the calf and it's weaker. What a surprise, it gets hurt.
And it probably flows well into, I guess, the health and managing the load, and sort of, I guess, more longevity kind of focus, especially for the 30 plus who have probably dealt with some surgeries throughout their career. There's probably arthritis, niggles, all that kind of thing. So what are some health considerations, especially when it comes to managing their load?
If we look at long term, one of the fastest attributes, I guess, that decline is power. And that sort of thing, explosive movement, speed, and I think we can all relate to that if we're in our 30s, nearly 40s, 50s. If you're listening to this and you've tried to sprint after your kids or chase that, running feels awkward. You can feel definitely how much slower you are, and you kind of flash back to your glory days a little bit. It declines because we stop training it, primarily. So going through some of the world records for masters athletes, the over 60s world record is sub 12 seconds. It's 11 point something. In the 80s, it's 14 something seconds. It's sub 15. I think it's even sub 14.5. So,
which is insane.
So it shows that they're probably sprinters in teenage, sprinters their adult career, and then they've kept sprinting. And guess what? They're still fast, even in their 80s. Faster than most teenagers. So it's the fact that we don't train like an athlete when we spoke last time around that 12 to 18. So we want to build really good technique and strength and habits. Then as we come through, it's about maintaining especially power, because that declines as we get older, but it doesn't have to. And that's because, we stop sprinting, jumping, lifting explosively, and then we'll just blame it on age. But it's really that we're just not doing the right sort of training. We know, so even in some like studies where they've got identical twins, even on brain health, so things like dementia risk, when they scan the brain size, so like obviously brain shrinkage links to dementia, Alzheimer's, all this sort of stuff. The only difference they could find between these two twins, the better one with the better brain was stronger in the legs. That was the only difference they could find in this study. And it was off the back of, well, if you're really strong, there's potentially some links there between muscle and brain just directly, but if you're stronger, you can do more. So you're probably more active. You can do more things, better training. So you live a better life off the back of being strong. So we just got to be careful that as power, we're going to take things out. We're not going to want to run and sprint anymore, which then over time, what does that mean? Well, we're not going to run at all, and then all of a sudden we're not walking anymore. So then all of a sudden exercise is virtually nothing. And what we typically see, which we'll talk about in next series, is at 50, 60, it's almost like it hits them like a freight train. And they're like, now what do I do about this? Like, now I'm really worried about my health because the doctor's told them they're diagnosed with something or they're on these medications. But it can be avoided for the most part if we're really smart with how we train through our 20s and 30s.
So it's not about really slowing down. It's about training smarter.
Yeah, I think training smart is having some structure, having some intent to what you're doing, and being really consistent. And I think if we viewed it as not about, I don't play sport anymore, so I don't need to train. It's just about long-term health, investing in your own body. You only get one. So imagine if you only had one car your whole life. How well would you look after it? Would you, accelerate it as hard? Would you skip services? Would you just put any fuel in, or would you put the best fuel in? I think if you, and we've only kind of got a certain mileage to our bodies. So there's no point banging it up for things that are pointless. They might seem like a good idea at the time, but like sit back and think, is this actually going to help me now and into the future? Because if you do it right, it really helps you long term. It shouldn't break you. And I think people like, this will hurt me, or this, that sort of training, like it's not safe for me. Well, that might be true, but it's understanding, who should I listen to? Where's a good environment that will cater to my needs and actually look after me so that I can do this not only now, but into the future. Because I believe we should train like an athlete our whole life. What that looks like into our 30s and 40s, 50s and beyond is a bit different, but it's just scaled back sort of stuff. It's still, an element of speed training and power work in there. What we did before, so I've been doing some of our sessions with our kids now, and there's not there's definitely some movements, like some of our leg strength and rear foot elevated stuff, where a lot of, especially our older athletes, like yourself and our 17, 18-year-olds, would destroy me. But I can hold my own in most things. And it's not because I'm crazy consistent now. It's because I did all the work before. So the key is, like, if we do it the whole way through and stay consistent, it's possible. And you do hold on to a lot of it. Like, muscle memory does exist. The cells in our muscles do remember, and if we have detrained a little bit, they come back really quick. So it is an investment that the more you can do now, the better off you're going to be in the long term.
And so finally, what about the education side of things? How does the mindset shift, obviously, from in your prime years to sort of coming out of your prime in your sort of 30 to 40s, still wanting to train a bit? How does the mindset evolve across that period?
Yeah, so sort of set the starter. Hopefully that's a lot more mature now in your adult years. So from that 20s onwards, really about that awareness around your training and what works and how you feel off the back of it, and then owning that. So it's not about listening to just mum or dad did this or didn't do this for me. Now it's really about driving that yourself. When to push, when to pull back, just being really smart with what you do. Obviously your sleep, nutrition, or your mindset stuff sits in and around that. It's one system, they all help each other. So that sort of links into that ownership, I guess. You need to track your progress. So one of the things that just blows my mind is that people just go to the gym, for example, and just do stuff. It's like before you walk in the door, you should know what you're doing. It's like going to a footy training session when there's no plan. Like, smart players pretty quickly realise, I don't really know what the point of this is if there's actually a plan. Whereas when you go to a session that you can tell has been mapped out, it's organised well, it's a sharp session, you get so much more out of it. And your training should be the same. You shouldn't need to be in the gym for 2 hours trying to figure it out. It should be 45 minutes, 60 minutes tops. Get in your warm-ups, do all your stuff that matters, and then get out. So I think 30s onwards, it's a bit more, I don't know if you need to prove yourself anymore. So hopefully you've done a lot of the hard yards. Now it's really about really clever self-management and preserving your performance. It's not about PBs and, trying to win everything now. Yes, there's some competition and measure and track, but I think you've got to be a bit smarter around that. And then I think a big point off the back of that, it should make you feel strong and energised. If you find your training is, this point, making you feel exhausted, it's taking away your energy, you're not feeling stronger off the back of it, for everything else outside of your sport, as well, then I'd question about what you're doing. Like, I don't know if you're getting the benefit out of it. One of my favourite quotes off the back of that, though, is exhaust the body, tame the mind. I think that doesn't mean push through pain. I think it just means within your limits, work hard, be consistent. And I think off the back of that, you got a clear head, you manage stress better. I think everything else around that, your performance is at a higher level, not just from sport. And the reason why I mention that is because I find people retire and then go, well, I don't have to do that anymore. It's like, that's not the mindset for me. We battle with kids that go, I'm not going to get drafted, or the pathway's kind of closed, I'm going to stop. I would like people to think, I'm here till I'm 80. Because that should be the mindset. It's like, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life.
Because how often do you see, especially pro athletes who are very recognisable, you see them during their prime where they're dominating, and then you see them 20, 30 years later getting interviewed and they're...
Look nothing like what they do. Yeah, lots. And it just, to me, says they didn't have the right habits at the time. This is going off track a bit, but with Geordie, it's like, he's going to be elite. He's got access to all this stuff. He might not even play sport in that sense. Like, to me, he will train and be active because it's healthy. I don't necessarily think you always have to think pro sport. If you get that and that's your goal, great. But this is bigger than that. Even pro sport, it should be about setting you up for what's next. And it's about learning the habits and what it takes to perform at a high level, which is why I think athletes, often the good ones with the right habits, make great CEOs and business owners and go on to other careers even more successful in their sporting career, because they had all the right habits that made them successful in their sport. Like, it's the habits that give them the success, not the sport.
I think that's where it's a slippery slope, especially for the ones who probably are finishing up their career sort of mid-30s, they don't want to train as hard as they used to, so that means they kind of don't train at all.
Yeah.
And then once they don't train at all, it's hard to get back into it. Whereas if they had the mindset and shifted their priorities around training to a bit more of a structured, it might be a 30-minute gym session instead of 2-hour gym session. It's just probably a bit easier to be consistent instead of just doing it all flat out.
Yeah.
So if we were to, I guess, wrap things up, what are the, key takeaways for this age group?
So I think if we go that 18 to kind of 30, I think the focus is really around like just optimizing your performance. So this is a chance to really peak in a lot of areas. From your health perspective, I think remember in and around that power decline. So, strong, powerful, fast, and that comes off the back of a bit of load management, but, still train like an athlete. From our education sort of side, I think it links back into, being really accountable, consistent, like what you just said. It's not necessarily about, sort of smashing yourself. Just be aware of what works, gives you energy, what doesn't, how you then create a schedule, I guess, that works for you. So you should be really trying to sort of keep building and really optimize your peak performance. Sort of 30 to 40, it's a bit more, I think, longevity. You again, sort of a bit more move well, maintain that power. So you're maybe not quite going as hard and as heavy with some things. Like, you got to respect that, we are aging, but if we stay smart, we don't have to feel like we are. It's just if you try and do what you did in your teens, obviously it's going to be pretty hard once you get to 30 plus. From a health perspective, I think that power and maintaining those qualities is still really important. But I guess now more from a function standpoint, and that'll help things like your joints, your tendons, your muscles, because they can still do somewhat intensive things relative to your ability, so that we're not chasing after our kids or joining in a local footy session or going do a bit of exercise, going for a run and pinging our calf every second week. Sort of similar, I think, from the education piece in around like it's self-management, understanding where you're at, and just being really smart with how you do it. Because I think if you do that right, you can stay strong, you can have lots of energy, you can still be really capable to mix it with people half your age in some areas. If you don't just accept I'm old and I can't do things now, I think we still can. I think we can do a lot more than we